Okay, so welcome back to Coach Connect. Here's where we explore the stories and strategies and insights of trailblazers who are transforming the world of coaching and well-being. What drives their success and what fuels their passions for helping others? We're here to uncover their secrets and share them with you. This show is brought to you by Vibely.io, the all-in-one coaching platform designed to empower coaches with tools, resources, and support they need to thrive and help their clients achieve meaningful, long-lasting growth. I'm Dr. Diego Salinas, your guide on this journey. As a neuroscientist, physician, and health coach, and co founder of Vibely, I'm committed to celebrating the incredible work of coaches everywhere and help them unlock their full potential. So let's dive deep into what makes coaching powerful and a force of change. Today, I'm really honored to present our guest, Dr. Kate O'Farrell. Dr. Kate O'Farrell is an assistant professor and clinical coordinator in the Department of Health and Kinesiology of the University of Utah. Dr. Kate has a PhD in Health and Kinesiology and MS in Exercise Physiology and Health Coaching, and a dual BS in Exercise Science and French Studies. Kate is a national board certified health and wellness coach and ACSM certified exercise physiologist. Kate's research focuses on trauma informed practices, resilience, physical activity interventions. She has published in peer reviewed journals and contributed to several book chapters. In addition to her research, Dr. O'Farrell is dedicated to teaching and mentoring. She has developed and taught in a variety of courses, from exercise physiology to health behavior change. She's passionate about fostering inclusive and engaging learning environments, and has presented on topics such as trauma informed pediology and active learning strategies. Outside of academia, Dr. O'Farrell is actively involved in community service, including her role as a board member in the Thrive Center for Survivors of Torture. She's fluent in French and enjoys integrating mindfulness and well being practices into her daily life. Dr. Kate, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so I've had the pleasure of getting to know you the last few weeks or months, and always want to start off with what kind of how people got started into coaching. Kind of how your journey of becoming a coach, and how you discovered this wonderful career.
Yeah, I actually love this question. I challenge everyone I work with to think about this for whatever field that they're interested in. So thanks for the question. I think about how I got to me sitting in this chair talking to you today. I think of it as kind of like moments that are either focusing or something that sparked a pivot. And so I even in hearing my bio, that I consider myself kind of a curator of things that I really love. And so I discovered early on in life that I really loved learning the French language. And so I got a bachelor's degree paired with exercise science because I loved movement and all of those things. Um, and that actually sent me into an internship. And prior to the internship, I was really exploring like all sorts of things that I wanted to do. I really my bucket of where I wanted to go was just massive at that point. And I got to work with an organization that helped individuals in really, really hard life circumstances. And I loved every second of it. I remember I walked into the internship and they basically said, like, your job is to make people happy. And I was like, okay, like that sounds perfect for me. I would love to do that. And so, I took people on walks. I taught English classes. I went to their homes and made sure their homes were comfortable and they had food and things like that. And prior to that, I thought I wanted to go kind of one direction, still within the health world, but one direction. And working with those individuals was transformative for me. I really realized like, oh, these conversations, these moments for advocating for them and just getting outside and moving together and just finding joy in life was it laid a platform for me. And then from there, I went into my master's program where I was really fortunate to work with individuals that come to the United States as refugees and they have a history of torture, survivorship, and um, again, I learned so much working with them, and if it's okay, I'm gonna tell one story that kind of I think it sent me in my
Please.
research, it's informed my teaching, everything.
Yeah.
Um, we were doing a mind body skills class where basically you go around the room and kind of share how's it going, and then you do activities, learn some stuff, and then kind of dialogue and build some skills around just mind body connection stuff. And the first part of the session was we pass around kind of a rock and everyone shares how they're doing that day, just a brief check-in. And we had an individual who did not want to be there. Like she showed up. So it's always in my mind, like, well, she showed up,
Yeah.
but really not engaging, almost seemed angry, and I just couldn't understand the context for it, right? I knew there's something that she wasn't sharing that was, you know, in the back of her mind. And then we moved together. We did just a gentle qigong class, which was like a tai chi type movement, really gentle movement. And as part of the movement experience, I had everyone create their own movement. And so we were like, people were like pretending to be a cat, and other people were like a sunset and a sunrise or a tree, right? Just all sorts of fun ideas. And I don't remember what she did as her movement, but we came back and sat down after and checked in. And during that conversation, she volunteered to speak first, which was not what happened earlier in the session. And she said that she never felt like she was so able to express herself than in that movement moment. And for me, it was like, "Ha!" Like
Wow.
singing of the mountains, just like, there's something here for folks that have experienced trauma, and that's all of us, I think. And recognizing that movement and working collectively with other people and, that connection piece, there's just something kind of almost magical feeling happening, and so that led me into my research looking at trauma-informed practices. It is all like, everything that I teach is really kind of opening those doors. So I some of those kind of pivotal moments for me, it's always a chance to connect with people, and they teach me something that just expands my thinking, and, I think that health coaching is always that for me, right? Like, I always tell students that I am helping to train, like, let people surprise you. That's the beauty of health coaching and, kind of behavior change in general, is because we're giving space for the other person to really share and be the expert in the room. They get to surprise us, and they get to be the one that kind of guides the thinking into new ways that maybe we couldn't have thought of just on our own. And so it's since then, I've always known that I love teaching, and I've always known that I loved helping people and kind of with their health behaviors, and teaching students to help more people with their health behaviors just felt like a really natural kind of landing place for me.
I keep on getting goosebumps from this podcast, and this is no exception, right? You lit up talking about giving joy to others, right?
Mhm.
And this idea that when we help others, we find joy ourselves. And
Yeah.
um, there's something that story is very powerful because I think everyone deserves joy and happiness. And the thought that even when you've been through hard times or atrocities,
Mhm.
that joy is still possible because often there's a sense of hopelessness
Yeah.
when we are so depressed or have been through so much adversity or injustice,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I think one of my favorite ideas around trauma and just working with people in general is the hard thing can lead to hopelessness, but it can also, if we, even with really simple acts, it can be a resilient springboard, right? Like it's like,
Yeah.
yes, it can make us hopeless, but if we are connected to other people, if we feel supported, if we feel, that there's some path of optimism that I'm now open to, like, I'm stronger for it now, right? And so it's amazing to be able to, you know, witness that, see that in other people, and of course, experience it ourselves.
Yeah, I think with coaching and any kind of well-being and related trauma-informed care, it's what makes the difference between post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic growth.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And both are, reasonable paths for an individual to experience, right? And just because we've experienced one doesn't mean we can't also then get onto a kind of a growth path from
Right.
there, right?
Right. It can start post-traumatic stress and then can be rewired and relearned as post-traumatic growth in the long run. And that's been through that cycle in my own version myself too. And it feels
Mhm.
far away removed, but to empower someone. And the example you gave it with your physical movement too is I've said before, sometimes you gotta move the body to move the mind.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Someone one time asked me, what's between mental health and physical health? And I was like, they're the same thing. It's all
Yeah,
in the
health is
same
health.
sack of skin.
Yep. Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a I even used it earlier, like that idea of mind body, but it's just like human. Like it's just us. We're
Mm,
just it's all part of the same person. So,
yeah. I think science is starting to catch up to see what we've already known kind of intuitively, right? I read
mhm,
a article a while back showing It's part of your brain called cerebellum, which is involved in balance and stability. And originally, we thought it just processes the motor cortex, then goes to cerebellum, makes it kind of fine tuned so you can be this graceful person. But a
Sure.
few years ago, they showed all these tracks that go from the cerebellum to the frontal cortex instead.
Mm.
And it's like, yeah, why? And my co-founders know this. My best ideas come from when I'm skating or moving, right? Those ahas happen, and that something about moving the body does move the mind. Getting unstuck physically can help being unstuck mentally.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it like, there's a play piece to that, there's a joy piece to
Mm,
that, that it's like, oh, like, I think a lot of being able to be unstuck is, like, I need to shake off whatever is, like, binding me, and it's like, yeah, movement helps literally open you up, but then it
yeah.
obviously, like, psychologically is helping you do that as well.
Yeah. You and me are both kinetic people too. I can see we both
Yeah,
talk with our
we're
bodies and
moving the
language
whole
too,
time,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the also this idea that I think creativity comes from it too. Sometimes when we're stuck in a problem, it's often there's many reasons, but one thing could be lack of finding a creative solution around it.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I say having, for example, those who are coaches who listen to the podcast, when you're brainstorming with a client, I tell
Mhm.
people it's not just about brainstorming to give factual ideas, to give concrete options. I say brainstorm and give ideas that are out there, outlandish, because you're opening that creative space up and now you can find a solution within there, right? That sometimes that playfulness, that creativity is where novelty and unstuck happens for in a variety of cases.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many times we suggest, like, start with a dream world, right? Like, what
Mm,
if? And then what's, I think, often true is that's actually not that far off from what we actually end up moving forward with, because we think it's like, "Oh, that's outlandish, and I'm being playful and so goofy with my thinking," but it's like, "Well, actually, there's a nugget of reality infused in that that we can actually grasp, like, take with us and move forward with," right?
mm. Yeah, I heard a phrase that sounded like it's a smart man who listens to his wisdom of his inner child.
I love that.
Right.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, there's so much here that is inspiring me to talk about. One thing too is this idea of teach me something. The clients, we're so privileged in this position of working with people that we learn. We're not the experts in their lives. How can we know
Mm,
more about them than they know? But we had this talk just before we went live. We are honored and privileged to be this close in front of someone's humanity,
yeah.
face to face with all the realness of this. And I always learn something about myself, my client. There's something inspiring, something just so authentic and real, um, that just feels like a genuine. I feel most alive during those genuine connections and genuine moments.
Yeah, definitely. You can it's like a spark happening every time one of those moments happens, right? And it's like, great, if I collect enough of those sparks, it's like it's exactly what you said. It's a privilege, right? It's just like, oh, how lucky, how fortunate are we that we get to have ongoing conversations with individuals to expand our thinking, and then obviously to kind of help facilitate their own thinking and their own navigation of life, right? It's just
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite parts of health coaching is because we think of it as such a holistic picture of well-being, right? It's not just your cholesterol levels, which, yes, that's part of health, but it's this part of health, not this part of health, right? And so
Yeah.
recognizing that there's so much to explore, and so creativity and play, it makes perfect sense that those should fit in coaching because it's an actual exploration across things that they've never really sometimes
Mm.
thought of as their health, and then you make those connections and really understand the humanity of it.
Yeah. The exploration with integration. And I've said before to some of my clients, I'm like, listen, if you're trusting me with your thought process, you're
Mm,
trusting me with your brain. It is an honor and privilege to be there. And maybe that's where we may pivot to teaching, right? Because I feel
yeah,
don't feel dissimilar about teaching, right? Someone's trusting me to be vulnerable on their learning journey. And I used to say
mm,
teaching, now I kind of say help people develop. Maybe since
yeah,
coaching, I feel less that I'm doing something more, creating that space for them to be their best self, their authentic
right.
self. And so I wonder if you can tell me a little about how maybe University of Utah started with a master's program, because I really want to talk about this higher level education in coaching, right?
Mhm.
And so if you can tell me a little bit the history of University of Utah's program, and then we'll dive into some of those differences that make it so unique and this advanced level skills that they're learning through you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we, like anything in life, it's been such a, winding path to get to where we are, I feel like. We started the program is now part of Health and Kinesiology, but I think it's helpful to know that in our history as a college, we used to be health promotion education and exercise science, and then merged to be kind of more broadly health and kinesiology, which, like I just said with health, like you can imagine how expansive and big the interests are across our faculty groups. And the exercise science department had an exercise physiology and master's in wellness coaching program. And then the health education and promotion group had a master's in becoming a health education specialist. And so when our departments merged, it was this really unique opportunity for us to say, there's really like the Venn diagram of these two programs is strong, it's big, there's a lot of overlap. And so recognizing that it was this opportunity for us to create kind of a novel program in the field where we have health coaching and really an emphasis in kind of the broad nuances of health coaching, one-on-one group, those sorts of things, paired with some skills and strategies around more of a health education, some public health, more of kind of a big picture programming and evaluation type of training. And so when our program merged, we really wanted to emphasize kind of the qualifications to help an individual become CHES certified, so certified health education specialist, which is kind of the one of the standards within that field, and then also be partnered with the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches for the health and wellness coaching kind of arm of our program, and recognizing that students, when they complete our program, can sit for both of those exams to kind of really launch themselves into a variety of directions they want to go. So our program is a non-thesis program, and I actually hate the term non-thesis. It feels very academic to me, and like I don't want to be non something. I would like to be something, but that's
Language
the word
matters,
that
right,
exists
Kate?
right
Yeah,
now.
you're right.
Yeah, I'll change the world one day, but for now it's called a non-thesis program. And the idea behind that style of master's program is that it's very applied, very experiential, and really it's a toolbox building master's program so that when someone graduates, it can be a terminal degree, meaning it can be, you get a master's not with the intention of moving on to a PhD or other graduate school, but that graduate experience is kind of tying a ribbon on, great, now you're ready to launch into the world if that's where you want to go. And so the program, I'll just share kind of a few of the aspects that I think make us unique or that are distinctive, and maybe not unique to other master's programs, but unique to a health coaching certifying program that is within a master's education experience. And I think the timeline is,
Maybe Kate, as you go
please.
into, maybe you could explain to everyone in the audience who is more familiar with the differences, right? So, first thing in chess, right? So, I think it's
Yeah,
wonderful that people may not even know what that is, but because coaches would say we're not the expert in information, but you are a health education specialist too. So, curious if we
yeah.
can
So
also
it's
talk
a
about
second
that
hat.
difference too.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe let's start there because it's two different hats, and we try to really emphasize that distinction.
Yeah.
There are moments, and we learn this even in health coaching, motivational interviewing, those things. There are moments when education can be really helpful within, for example, like public health initiatives, within even corporate wellness, clinical wellness, community wellness settings. There are times when building a program, evaluating a program, and really kind of the strategies around implementation required kind of that experience, which is, I would say, more of a health education specialist experience. And so while health education can often sound like it's like, let me tell you what health is, it's much more partnered, and there's more of an emphasis on, community-based work together and really partnering with spaces but I see it as a little bit more bigger picture. So it really is like program development and evaluation of programs, whereas health coaching is really specific to the skills and strategies that we use when we work one-on-one with someone, when we work in a group setting, um, to help them navigate behavior change with them as the expert in the room, with them as the one that's really, we always say, like, they're driving the car, where we're sitting and kind of navigating that, right? And I might have even got that idea from you. So thinking about what the difference might be, it's like, okay, I'm going to coach and let you really be the driver, but you might need a map eventually. And then I can kind of also put on my health educator hat and say, here's a map, here's one way we could go. And then I go back to health coaching and I say, what do you think about that? Right? Like, do
Mm,
you want to take this path, or would you prefer us exploring some other roads to get to where you want to go? Right. So
yeah.
they're very partnered. They connect really well together, but the roles are distinctive. Um, and what's exciting about our program, I think, is that students can come in. What I've seen time and time again is students come in really interested in one or the other.
Okay.
So a lot of folks, like, health coaching is just, it's booming as an interest right now. So folks come in and like, oh, I want to be a health coach. It's like, beautiful. That's going to maintain. We're going to equip you with those skills, but also helping them understand, kind of the health education side. For some folks, it does kind of shift their perspective to like, actually, I would like to be a program manager, and
Mm.
I would like to write grants to get funding for folks that don't typically have access to health, or whatever it might be that they're really interested in. And that health education side can really supplement or add to that.
That's great to know because even frankly, I was not fully aware how much of the public health or kind of bigger picture part of health education
Mhm.
specialist is, right? And I think you bring up a great point too. That coaching is not about never telling information,
Yeah,
right? And the pitfall with people are starting off as I'm just tell them fix them by telling what to do, but sometimes
right.
the information is helpful, right? So I remember learning about weight loss coaching, and vegetables are not all the same. Starchy vegetables versus non-starchy vegetables. And
Sure.
so a client was trying to work on change. She's like, I had so much vegetables. I have all my potatoes and sweet potatoes, and I'm like, they are vegetables. And so that's where that information helps them get
Mhm.
to that next level. But I love the idea it's more also sounds like systems based change as well, too, kind of more community based change and how to help almost like a public health perspective lens.
Yeah, like, we lean into kind of that socio-ecological model, right? Where it's like, yes, there's an individual, and I think that's actually where, like, health coaching, we obviously connect folks with resources across all of the different layers, but individual, community, policy, right? Like, really kind of leaning out to those larger systems.
Mm.
Eventually someone needs to talk to the legislators to get stuff advocated for, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's there's so many roles that can exist within our field. And the idea with our master's program is that we're equipping folks with skills so that they can step into those, whichever of those worlds or multiple of those worlds that they're maybe interested in.
Yeah, and maybe now is I know we talk about these differences too. So compared to let's say non-master's programs, typically there's
Mhm.
60 hours or plus or minus of
Right.
teaching, and you don't get a degree, you get a certificate, right?
Yep.
Certificate from this place. But this is different. You actually get a master's degree here, and you mentioned the term non thesis, but
Non-thesis.
but when we talk about the idea is that instead you're really fostering creativity and autonomy, saying there's a lot of ways you can fulfill improving the system or improving
Yeah.
people's lives. Let's give them a tool so they can do that and let their passion shine through. Because we know when you're passionate, that's when you spend the most amount of time and effort, and
Mhm.
you go the furthest. So really letting their natural, wanting to help, give them the tools to get as far as it can go. So I'm curious if you could tell about a little bit more like some of the things that you do in your program because when I heard about it, I was fascinated.
Yeah, I'm completely biased, but this is like the
Yeah.
sweet spot of our program, I think, is kind of that autonomy and kind of creativity to approach all sorts of problems within health. So, 2 things that I think, help explain that maybe the best are that in our program, there's essentially 2 courses that students take that are the equivalent of what would be, just a certificate program, if that's helpful to kind of think about. So then you can imagine, if they're taking 10 to 12 credit hours, if 3 to 4 of those per semester are focused on what qualifies them to be a certificate program. The rest is expanding on that, adding to that in some way. So it's a deeper dive potentially. It's broader skill sets or more deep skill sets depending on what they're interested in. But the two things that I think stand out beyond just the coursework, first we have practical experiences. So just kind of background for folks, to become NBHWC certified, you have to complete a number of sessions before you can even sit for the exam. And, it's 50 sessions. It's a
Yeah.
relatively, like, that sounds like a lot for a person trying to get it. So I'm not discounting the 50 sessions. That's plenty of work. But our program gets 200. And so just recognizing that there's a lot more time spent, and where they get the hours that they're required to get for the program that's part of my responsibility. And one of my main goals is to make sure that folks have a really broad experience. And what I mean by that is when folks come in, again, they kind of know, like, oh, I really want to be in cardiac rehab, or I really want to work with community members within, diabetes prevention or whatever it might be. And often that maintains, but I really think life can surprise you. And like
Mm.
my work with folks that came to the United States as refugees was because I was placed at a site that I knew nothing about folks that came to the United States as refugees. I know nothing about torture survival. And they said they needed an exercise physiologist. And I was like, all right, I guess I'll figure it out. Right. And so I
Yeah.
encourage my students to be placed at several different sites so that they can really lean into what they think they already love, maybe be exposed to things that they'll also love, or really importantly, learn, I don't want that thing, right? Like that's a really valuable learning too. And
Yeah.
so we place them at clinical sites, we place them at corporate wellness sites, and then we place them at community-based sites. And so they kind of get a good variety of working with different types of folks, working with health with different focuses. And typically within their second year of the program, they're starting to understand, like, "Ooh, I really would like more of this," because
Mm.
that's kind of the trajectory I see for my career. So then we can start to kind of tailor and let it morph to focus on what they are wanting.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, and I think, Diego, this goes to what you're really saying, is they get to do a project. So instead of a thesis at the end of their master's, they create a project from start to finish. And so during first year, they're really brainstorming, what possibly could my project be? And this is where they're
Mm.
really starting to see, like, where are those grains of passion that I really want to like plant and let grow. And eventually a focus is established, and then they work with a committee of faculty to be able to work with folks, develop a program, implement health coaching into something where it didn't exist before. There's such a variety. We've had students work with other students. We've had students work with um, kind of across chronic disease types, right? So cardiovascular health, metabolic health, whatever it might be. We've had students really think about strategies for um, kind of identity forming and like building kind of a lifestyle of health for themselves. We've had students do like intuitive eating programs,
Cool.
intensive lifestyle programs, right? So it's so broad where the students can take it. And it really is just like find an interest and then find faculty that can help you in that process and then go from there. And one of my favorite parts of the project experience is that students actually get to partner with sites to actually develop experiences for patients, for clients, for community members, whoever it might be. And like, I'll just give one example. We have a student right now that is she took a culinary medicine class within our college, which is a glorious class where you get to eat amazing food and talk about health, right? So she took that class, and then she was really interested in helping folks that are typically underserved when it comes to programming. And so she's working with a refugee health organization and offering basically a modified diabetes prevention program merged with culinary medicine. And so people are cooking together and moving together, and it's very experiential. And it's just been so fun to see, like, she was interested in all of those things. And so she got to kind of create a package deal that let her pursue that in more detail.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
and again, like I could never have designed that for her. It was her brainchild, and she really was the person who got to drive it.
I think it speaks to the power of someone who is a coach creating a program. I mean, because that kind of
Mhm.
mindset of saying, I can never imagine what a client's going to say, right? Like, you want to empower someone. Again, that's why I don't even call it teaching anymore. I say helping
Yeah,
someone develop, because before
yeah.
teachers like, this is how you do it my way. And I'm like, no, why would I limit someone in their thinking? I think before academia is like, okay, do it this way. And then when you're done, you can feel free to do what you want.
Sure,
Right?
sure,
Like, but you have to follow our
absolutely.
rules, and even though you don't think it's great and just stick in the box, and then you can maybe have a chance to change the system saying, why don't we foster creativity in here? And there's a few things I
Mhm.
want to reflect that you mentioned. So first, the idea that they're the exposure they get.
Yeah.
Remind me a lot of medicine residency,
Yeah, right, exactly.
right? There's a reason why you do rotations. And I went to medicine. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to help people. I thought maybe surgery. I love tinkering and playing with my hands. That said, during surgery rotation, I was bored out of my mind because everyone is sleeping. You can't talk to them.
Yeah, interesting, and you're like, I mean, given where you are now, of course you'd want people to be able to speak back to you, right?
Well, it was fun to do this. I was like, I can play guitar to get that satisfaction, right? The
Mhm.
next rotation I had was pediatrics. I had never, I mean, I've always liked kids, I've been good with them. I never thought pediatric. I had misconceptions that it was like, just people would say in surgery, oh, just snotty-nosed kids. There's not much acuity. Peds was so vast and so
It's
varied.
everything. It's
It's
just
from one
everything
day
that's
old to
little
21
human.
day old. Yeah. And the atmosphere and the holistic approach to someone. And so when medical students would be asking for advice, hey, what should I do? I go, rotate around because you're the only one going to be on call, not your mom, not your dad, not your partner, not your
Mhm.
kid. You're the one going to be on that call. And you won't know what you like until you try. You might have theory like, oh, I could like this because X, Y, and Z, but
Sure.
until you do it. And I love that your program says you come with an interest and explore different options. I think a lot of
Mhm.
coaches that are out of certificate programs, they struggle with finding their niche. A little bit, you kind of say, well, I think I want to help the population out. You spend all this time creating your, trying to get into the population, and you realize it's maybe not what you thought it was. It doesn't fulfill you the way you wanted it to be. And then you kind of try it again. And that's part of any business, any career. But it's nice that
Abs
you guys give an opportunity to not only get that breadth of experience. So when they are on the job force, they can find different positions from their experience, but also as importantly, if not more so, fostering creativity. Because I always say, I mean, I think the shared vision here with Vibely is that Vibely's goal is to foster solo autonomous coaches,
Mhm.
right? Like, I do not want to tell someone how to work because I've heard ideas from their coaches that I would never have thought of,
Right.
and it serves their clients very well. Having the coaches do it
And them
well.
as a coach, right? Like, and them. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly, that therapeutic alliance, taught us before, right? The biggest part of therapeutic alliance from the provider side is authenticity and passion. Right? So
Mhm.
the coaches who I know who do like nature walks with their clients, right? Or who do culinary kind of medicine and cook with their clients. For me,
Mhm.
it's the length of time. I do time-based coaching, not session-based coaching. You have
Sure.
blocks, you have long blocks, and you choose the time you want. That's my idea that came out of how I want to work. And
Sure.
so can we foster an environment like what you're doing in the educational system, foster and actually promote that creativity with the resources that the university has to help
Mhm.
foster that? And whole vibe is saying, I don't know, I don't want to tell you how to practice. Like, you have a better idea. The art of the science of here is where
Yeah.
the magic happens. And I think where coaching has this big potential, there's so much untapped creativity and new solutions that haven't been created just yet. I think it's
Mhm.
where we have a very common value of like, let's see what someone else surprises us with, not only our clients, and maybe the students that we're helping to nurture.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think one thing, I think we see this with our clients, we see this with the students, is once they've been treated that way, right? Like
Mm.
once they've received that, it's like, "Oh, of course I want to give that to the next person that I talk to," right? So it's just one of those things that I think does have a ripple effect within the health field. So for example, it's very common for someone to come into a health coaching session assuming like, "Tell me what to do, please." Right? Like, it's just like, "I'm ready.
Right.
Tell me what to do." And then the first thing we say is, "Well, actually, the philosophy of coaching is opposite of that," right? And we, of course, say it in a way that helps them really understand the scope of coaching. And um, that disrupts the health field, that simple
Mm,
conversation. And so similarly, giving folks autonomy within their education can disrupt pedagogy, right? Like it can help us really think about there's the phrase like sage on the stage is what a kind of how we used to teach, right? And it's like, well, put that away. Like I don't need to be the sage on the stage. I'm actually on your side and we're moving through this content discovery together. And yes, I'm giving it's the same with coaching. I'm giving you ideas. I might provide you with some information, but it's you. Like you're the
yeah.
one that gets to do this. I actually I help a lot of folks develop their teaching philosophies, which is it's just so fun. And part of what we do is I have them create kind of a metaphor for teaching, and I find it really helpful for like a metaphor for coaching too. And one of my favorites that someone, created and kind of drafted out was that teaching is like gardening. And at first I was like, "Oh, of course, you're the gardener,
Mm.
students are growing, they're thriving, you're providing them with, like, nutrients," right? And I read the second sentence of their philosophy statement, and it was like, "Students are the gardeners." And I just provide, like, the plot of land that they get to work within, but they're the ones planting things and growing things. And I was like, "Ah," like, that's so
Yeah.
good to really disrupt that thought of, like, I again, we are experts in our fields, but we're equipping folks, students, clients, whoever it might be, with the ability to navigate information, education, health behavior change, whatever it might be, as the leader of that experience. And it's why not have it infused into everything that we train our students with so they get to, again, experience it and then want to give that back to the folks they work with next.
Okay, I love the passion and philosophy. Again, another goosebump moment for me. Yeah, I used to in medicine, it's not as open minded in this case, right? But I was one of those little more.
It's
I
getting
would.
there.
It's
We're
getting
working.
there though, right? And that's a whole nother maybe podcast in itself because some of the language used in medicine even is so rough with how we teach people. Let's put it that way. It's another discussion. But
Mhm.
I remember when I would be the senior of the team, I would say, let's do a huddle. Sometimes it was, if I was senior resident, I had 5 residents underneath me and then
Of course.
6 medical students. I'm like, we're a soccer team. Let's huddle up, right?
Yeah.
And I would say, listen, there's nothing magic about me. I've just been doing this for a little longer. So I might know the medication name right now or the protocol, but I'm like, you just took pathophysiology last week. You might remember the reason why the medication works more than I do, or something else
Mhm.
here. I go,
Yeah.
I'm going to not know a lot of things. So when you ask me something, if I say I don't know it, teach it to me. Like I don't know a lot of stuff,
Mhm.
and I think this is regardless of whatever field you're in. My philosophy is the more that you learn, a true learner, the more you get humble and you realize how much there's not to know and how much
Mhm.
creativity is coming behind you, people who are new. So when I'm
Yep.
teaching people now, sure, I've been doing it 6, 7 years. I go, as much as I think about students, I am no longer a student. Well, I always am in a certain
Always
sense,
a
but
learner. Yeah.
I'm no
Yeah.
longer in the novice first stage of never having that blank slate. I go, so I might lose some creativity. Well, I have cool ideas. It may be different than yours. So please
Mhm.
tell me what. And when I was medical student, I would write down how I felt during rotation. What was it like being a first year student,
Mm.
second year? What I like when attendings ask me questions versus the ones that because I would write and they would look at that. So when I was a senior resident, what did I want to be treated like, right? But even then, the more you go in learning, and I mean humility in the best way possible. Like, what a wonderful place to be humbled and be like to learn from those. Again, we're not teaching; we're teaching each other, right? That
Mhm.
creativity. There's one idea that you mentioned actually. I think during our when we met about a bus. Is that one of your
Oh,
students
yeah.
created? Yeah. What
Yeah.
could you remind me of that
So
idea? Like,
yeah, so this is it now exists at, like, kind of the university level, but we have a wellness bus that, and this is just variety of sites that we have. It's one of the sites that our students often get an opportunity to work at, and it's not credit to our program directly, it's bigger than
right,
that, but our students get to work in it, and it's a perfect example of, like, let's creatively think of a problem. Let's work with community members to build something that is actually helpful. So the bus is a physical bus, a traveling bus that goes to neighborhoods in our community within our, I think, county. Maybe there's a couple of counties that are part of it. But it goes places where folks typically have a harder time getting to care. So, harder time getting to a clinic, maybe it's not as easy for them to navigate, um, coming in for testing, whatever it might be. And they can come in and get biometric testing, so testing to see how their HbA1c is doing for diabetes values. They can get cholesterol testing, those sorts of kind of, things that can happen within a bus type of testing.
Mhm.
And then we have health coaches on site that deliver health coaching basically right as soon as they get that information, right? It's like, your mind is going in a lot of different directions.
Yeah.
Now that you have this information, how can we actually help you move forward with healthy behaviors, whatever that might be for them, right? So, someone finds out their blood pressure is within a range that might indicate hypertension, for example. And it's just like, there's lots of things that could be happening, contributing to that. What do you want to talk about? Right. And it's a chance for them to really like first step out of the bus, go actually be, active in their own healthcare in a way that actually feels meaningful to them.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite aspects of that group's work is we also have what's called a food pharmacy. And there's a trailer that's available for individuals to actually get like a bucket of fresh food, and healthy food in general, grains, things like that that are going to be healthy for them. And it's prescribed to them
Mm.
that they instead of or also medicine plus this food pharmacy piece to understand like exercise is medicine, food is medicine, and of course, like pharmaceuticals are medicine too. But really starting to kind of emphasize the power of just healthy lifestyles and lifestyle medicine as part of our healthcare system. And the Wellness Bus does a fantastic job advocating for that. And we're fortunate our program many of our students are funded with a graduate assistantship. And so in addition to the hours that they're collecting, many of them have an assistantship with, for example, like our Osher Center for Integrative Health, and the Wellness Bus is part of that group. So they get to go and be health coaches on the bus and, interact with folks that maybe they wouldn't have had access to work with previously. And then of course, just, experience that's really rich, really meaningful. I know a lot of them have folks that keep coming back. They see them kind of recurring visits on the bus, and there's just that sense of connection is always really beautiful.
Yeah, you mentioned, food as medicine, movement as
Mhm.
medicine, I think, but also within there's community as medicine. One of our
Yeah.
other
Oh,
podcast guests
absolutely.
mentioned that, right? And like all you're saying is really community as medicine, right? The groups that you're involved in, that sharing the rock moment, right? Now that you are and you're lit we saw about coaching, meet the clients where they're at. You
Yeah.
guys are
It might
literally
be
going
geographically.
to
Yeah,
meet the where
right.
they're at, right? I think it's also as a metaphor, but when I heard, I was like, this is literally that metaphor kind of come to life, right? You're literally meeting where they're at.
Mhm.
What's a barrier? Reaching out. Okay, then go to them instead, right? How to get what quality
Absolutely.
food? What did it? Here it is. And I also love, Kate, this what a coaching mindset you had when you said, okay, you have high blood pressure. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah,
That's what got to me, right? Because it's not like, "Let's fix it," and then it's like, what are you
right.
going through, right? What's going through your mind? And an opportunity for someone to digest that in real time versus that avoidance or shame that we thought could happen, right? When, like, something bad is happening, it's easy to avoid, shame,
Right.
withdrawal, and say,
Absolutely.
"No."
Well, and even, like, label myself as a person with hypertension, and that's me now, and it's like, well, again, it's one metric of your health. You are a whole
Mm.
person, and your blood pressure is doing something right now, right? It's just that idea of, like, letting it not it's information, not something that connects to your goodness as a person. And
Mm,
I think often when we experience shame, it's like, "Oh, I'm bad," right? Like,
yeah,
I have no goodness, and it's like, well, there's just we now have more information,
yeah.
and that can be all that it is, right? And it hopefully, I think health coaching is a pretty powerful tool to help people let go of that shame if we do it well.
Yeah, something we said before this talk is that something one of my good friends of mine is a therapist, and I've said this before. I'm very shame and guilt prone. I understand this of myself, right? And then that will cause me to withdraw and avoid. And she had a great saying, and this kind of tied into group coaching a little bit. You mentioned the kind of this community
Right.
as medicine model that she said, shame and guilt is like mold. It thrives in the darkness and dies in the sun.
Yeah. That's huge. That's such a powerful thought for sure. And often being in the sun is just having a conversation about it, right? It doesn't mean you have to like put a sign on and be that. It's just like, oh, say it out loud and say what you need, right? And
Yeah.
let's work through it together. I think that that's yeah, there's a lot of power in that idea of just
Yeah.
where are spaces where you can feel brave enough to put it into the light? Because I think, like, people talk a lot about safe spaces, and I love the idea of a safe space, but often I kind of push against it because we can't say someone like, "You feel safe now," because we can't decide if they feel safe, right? But
Great point,
potentially
Kate.
but potentially we can have spaces that open up people,
Yeah.
to recognize that they can be brave in spaces, right? And, like, open to share even if it feels vulnerable and those sorts of things. And I think that, it's shame is quiet as soon as we practice vulnerability or as soon as we put light to it. So,
Yeah.
I completely agree with that.
I love that also that concept of you can't force someone to feel safe. And so what I do with my clients, throwing this out here is I talk about my intentionality with them. I go, my intention is to create a space of non-judgment.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
go, but I don't, so you have to let me know if that intention is actually coming to life. Are you feeling
Mhm.
judged or not? I go, so I'm trying to avoid language. Not only people think of word non-judgment socially to mean don't say anything negative about me. But if I
Right,
go, like, Kate, that's an awesome picture behind you, that skull, that's a judgment.
right,
If I think it's awesome, I can think it's really not awesome. If I'm
right.
proud of it, I can think it's terrible, right? So I'll tell my clients, you're gonna see I'm not gonna use the word good, great, awesome, because that's a judgment. And if I do, I'm like, oh, that was a
Mhm.
judgment word. Let me take it back. Right. So
Yeah,
you can share people. My intention is to create a space of safety. What would help you feel that? That's what I want you to feel. And then
yeah.
having that dialogue on both ways. And I think also intermixing this conversation, talk about identity and when something happens, it's a balance. I think we live in a culture that's very on the extreme sometimes. It's either not talk about it at all or it's my I am this. And like, yeah,
Mhm.
I can have this. I can be brave and talk about it. And it doesn't have to fully define me or mean it's all I think about, I'm all I'm consumed by, yet I
Yeah,
still acknowledge it and work with it. But
yeah,
there is that
absolutely.
balance. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the power of using the word "and" instead of "but," right? It's like,
Mm,
"Oh, I'm this, but" it's like, "Well, what if it's and? I'm this and," right? Like, that's simply saying that in our language can change everything, and going language paired with non-judgment, I think that's such an important kind of reframing of judgment because often it's like, "Oh, if I think good of you, I'm not judging you." But I there is judgment happening, right? And so recognizing that I think the power in coaching is we consistently turn it back to them. Tell me how that felt.
yeah. Yeah.
Recognizing that you use this word, whatever the word is that you used, what are your thoughts now about it, right? Like it
Yeah.
really is just facilitating their thinking instead of me telling you what I think.
Yeah.
There's affirmations of like, ah, that was a powerful insight, right? Like I'm even just noticing someone's willingness to try or whatever it might be. We affirm things, but we don't have to necessarily put a judgment on it.
Yeah.
But it's such a natural part of how we interact with the world that it really does require practice.
I tell my people I'm training or helping develop is like, it's not natural to think this way. It's not common. I mean, right? Because our
Mhm.
brains are designed to judge, right? I'm like, well, I'm judging. Is this tea hot or cold? Is it like
Right,
it or
it's a
not? Like,
safety, like, survival thing that we learned. Yeah, absolutely.
right. So it takes a while to start replacing judgment with curiosity as a coach, right?
Mhm.
And the word and, my sister's a lawyer, and so we taught, and she's a wordsmith. Everything that she's really great with words. And
Yeah.
sometimes she'll joke with me, oh, and you're being all kumbaya and all this. And I'm like, it's actually more factual.
Mhm.
It's not meant to be a trick. It's actually, you're like, I am busy and I want to find time for myself.
Right, both can be true. Yeah,
Both can be
absolutely.
true, right? And at total anyone who's listening, who's maybe not a coach, I use this phrase sometimes when I'm training people. I go, "Hey, student X, Y, and Z." If I say you're really smart, dedicated, but I
It's
go,
like, "Great,
"How's
I
your heart
didn't hear
rate?"
any of that good. I didn't hear it gone."
Even
Yeah,
my heart rate went up just now, just saying it.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? Versus you're a smart, dedicated, and you're looking to ways to be the best provider possible because you care so much.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
both
and
are true. That's the
yeah,
power in
it's
there.
I think it emphasizes a growth mindset, right? Where it really is just like, it's we're and to your point earlier, asking for feedback from students, from clients, and just saying like, is this, are we, this is my intention. Is it meeting your intention?
Mm,
And if I want you to practice a growth mindset as a student or a client, I'm also going to model that for you to show that like I'm also learning and growing and trying to navigate choice of words and all of those things, right? And so
yeah.
I love that distinction because it's just like, yeah, I'm just figuring it out too, right? Like I'm just a person having a conversation with you.
Yeah, when we kind of can like take away the responsibility of being better or being right, and we're all on the same playing field that we can learn from each other. More, there's like a I would see when I tell some medical students like the shoulders really soften, right? Like it's like
Mhm.
okay, I don't have to hide from someone because what if they ask me a question I don't know,
Yeah,
right? We can just all be like lay on the table, and then actually that's where that creativity will foster it. And talk about shared values, right? Like I think what you're doing with University of Utah viably is like, "Hey, coaches, tell us what to build next." Most
right.
of the product updates have been because coach said, "We want a sandbox demo. We want workshops coming out. We want this." I spent John and I spent months thinking about what do all these coaches need? What does a student need? What does a part-time coach need? What does a full-time
Sure.
coach need? But since we've been live, it's listen to students, listen to part-time coaches, listen to them, listen to group coaches. Because
Mhm.
I can't have all the answers. Why would I have all the
Well, and
answers?
I don't need to, right? Like
I
I
don't
think
need
that
to.
it serves our egos to, right? Like that's the world that often we're trained in is like, oh,
Yeah.
that person knows so much
Yeah.
and now like they are glowing or something, right? But it's like actually collaborative effort gets us
Yeah.
so much farther. Like your company wouldn't exist the way it does without collaborative learning and recognizing that you don't need to be the expert. Like when I'm training my students, most of them have experience in physical domains of health. So like how to help with chronic disease, exercise programming, nutrition consultation, right? Like those are typically where their backgrounds have been. And one of the domains that we focus on is like financial wellness,
Mhm.
right? And a lot of them are like, "Well, I don't know anything about it." And I'm like, "Isn't that awesome?" Like that is like the sweet spot for you to be the best coach ever because do you know how to look up resources? Yeah, absolutely. That can be part of your time together in a session. And so I often will tell people they learn best to be coaches in conversations where they don't know a lot about the content
Mm,
because you have to be curious. Because it's like, tell me what you mean by some budgeting thing that you just brought up, because I actually don't know. And
yeah,
then I can take that to conversations about exercise where I do have a lot of education and still say, tell me what you mean by that. Like you said
yeah,
exercise. I would love to hear what do you mean by the word exercise? Because
yeah,
I have to try and like push against my knowledge as opposed to constantly bringing it into the room. And
yeah,
so knowing that, I think helps us be more creative to say like, "Oh, I can just let go of having to be the person that knows everything. I'm just a curious practitioner," right? And that's
yeah.
enough. That can be
Yeah.
enough, right? But yeah,
Hey, the
it's a hard thing to feel comfortable in sometimes.
yeah, to be comfortable and comfortable, right? And someone told me one of my mentors when I was training said we did a demo and then we're walking back to the room and she goes, pulled me back, she goes, "Diego, stop trying to solve people's problems. That's not your job
Mm,
anymore."
mhm.
Right? Because it comes from a well-intentioned place called the writing reflex, where we
Right?
get often rewarded for solving problems we do at work, right? In our family, teach our kids how to tie their shoes, whatever it is, right? But here it's
Absolutely.
a different, allowing them to solve their problems. And when I'm uh, again looking to provide students, I see when it's a topic from it's not their domain, just like you said, Kate. Maybe it's stress. When it's weight loss, they kind of go, okay, how to eventually talk about eating more or eating less, or there's like you can
Sure.
understand where
There's
it might lead
areas
up
to
to
focus on, yeah.
a lot of mental health in the middle, but like here's where my plan might end up being. But when people come in saying, "I'm feeling stressed," or "I don't know about mindfulness," I'm like, good. You don't have
Mhm.
to know. Don't solve. And this is where you leave with curiosity. And how can you solve their balance point when you don't know what their life is like?
Right,
How to let them
right.
solve their own balance point for you. And even from a learning perspective, I used to say, um, you know, part of learning, a requirement for learning is not knowing.
Yeah,
You have to
yeah,
not know to learn. So that's part of it. That's the joy. Enjoy the not knowing. That's how you can. If
mhm.
you already know it, you're not learning it. You're reinforcing it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so it's helping them make connections to things they do know so they can feel confident, but letting it be kind of this open world of like, yeah, let's figure it out. It's
Let's figure it out.
I know that you don't know this and how wonderful. Let's discover it together, right?
Exactly. Or that was the
Yeah,
next step. So, for the next step, I'm going to start wrapping up here because, Kate, I could talk to you all day long and continue this conversation.
absolutely.
But where can people find out more about, so you taught the master's program, or kind of get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to the University of Utah's website, we're situated within the College of Health. And so if you look within that program, College of Health, Health and Kinesiology, and then we have a page for our health education specialist and wellness coaching program. So if you want to know about that program, I think we'll share a link for that as well. And then I love a good conversation. So if
Mhm.
folks want to reach out to me directly, you're more than welcome to email me directly, and we can chat, and we'll share that email as well.
Great, and she's a wonderful conversationalist, I would say. I'm looking forward to being part of that. As we wrap up here, I want to thank you, Kate, for being our guest. But also, this is the last episode of season one of our podcast. So I just want to take a moment to kind of, in the holiday season, say a few kind of heartfelt words. I want to thank everyone who's been on this podcast for this first season. And I mean this, has really been a dream come true. The reason it's called Coach Connect is because the first day of my coaching program, I wrote Coach Connect. Find a way to make this more accessible, right? And I want to thank everyone, starting with my co-founders, Jad and Miriam. Without them, this dream wouldn't come true. I've been blessed to work with amazing, talented, passionate people with different skill set on a problem that we're all can't wait to help find solutions for. I want to thank all the guests who've been on the podcast. So after them, it was Laura Timbrook, Dr. Angela Cougar, Sonia Eklund, Jen Wright, Patty B and Cecilia Lanier, Rachel Barris and Cherie O'Neill, and now you, Kate O'Farrell. And last but not least, I want to thank all the attendees, everyone who's asked great questions during the podcast or giving good feedback or recommendations. What should you do next? Please keep on coming and let us know what you want for season two. We have really exciting guests, starting with Ellen Goldman for January 2nd, and a few other wonderful guests lined up too. But keep on giving us your suggestions, your feedback, because we really believe community is the medicine, right? That we all can work together. Thankful for all the coaches who use Viably platform and give us feedback, help us grow. Um, there's no ego when you're serving, Kate, right? And it's really, I mean it with the bottom of my heart. It is truly an honor and privilege to serve. And to serve those who serve others is like a dream come true. Um, gotta keep it to not get too emotional here. But yeah, Vibely's mission really is to help lower those barriers for people, right? And so let the creativity shine through. And so just want to, some people have asked me this. I want to kind of clarify. We are running a promotion for the end of the year. So anyone who signs up before January 1st will be locked in forever. I call it Founders Round for that $15 a month or $12 a month annually fee for everything, your website, all your service pages, HIPAA compliant platform security for you and your clients for chat, documentations. We have a lot more coming up, like workshops and group coaching and AI coming soon. So someone asked me, why is it so cheap? I'm like, no, it's not cheap. We want to make this affordable because our values. We want to do this is my mission to help change the healthcare system, the well-being system, not in healthcare,
Mhm.
help people get more connected. So if we can do that through technology to making your overhead easier and working together, that is an honor and privilege of a lifetime. So to everyone who can, I would say sign up, enjoy that first month free, check it out, give us feedback, and be part of the community. Let's really work on changes together. So thank you for everyone I mentioned. Thank you, Kate. I wish everyone happy holidays, happy new year, and I'm really, really excited for season two and what's to come in 2025 for Viably and the wellness community at large. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, let me make sure we're not live like I did last time.